Well, what you're looking at today is an icon from the 80s, a 1988 Ferrari 328 GTS. It just feels good to say that. And this car in Ferrari Red has only 13,000 miles. Now, with my simple brain, I figured that's about 450 miles per year since this car was sold out of a Michigan dealership, and it rolled right across the border into Canada. It was never registered in the US, but is a US car, which means it can go back across the border no problem at all. It initially went to the province of Ontario, then Alberta, and then here to British Columbia, and now is for sale. A friend of mine has a small boutique dealership. He called me up, he said, "Do you want to drive an 88 328 GTS?" I'm like, hello? It's like meeting your idols from back in the day. I'm sure people had posters of a car like this on their wall then. Now here's the thing is, a lot of people instantly recognize this era of Ferrari from, of course, Magnum PI, who had a 308, and this is a 328. Slightly different bumper in the front, and around the back is slightly different as well. And they also made some mechanical changes to it. I'll show you that in a moment. So why is this called a GTS? Well, the S stands for Spider, or a target top, a convertible, and I have the roof off today. The GTB, the Berlinetta, means a fixed roof. This, I think, is the more iconic of the two. So let's open up the back. I'll show you the engine, then we'll get inside and go for a spin. So when you open the back of this 328, you see it's a mid-engine car, of course. This is the trunk. There's a tonneau cover over the top. When you open that up, that's where you would put your luggage. Inside, there's the full jack and all of the tools that come with that. Also a full tool kit with some spares. You'd have things in there like a spark plug and some extra belts and those sorts of things. And basically the way this car was sold back in '88, everything is in the back there, including the original owner's manual. So why is this called a 328? Well, the previous car was a 308, and 3.0 meant 3 liter, 8 means 8 cylinder. So you can guess this went from 3 liters to 3.2 liters, and it still is an 8 cylinder. The previous cars were carbureted, then they went to fuel injection. That's what this car has. And also some of those 308s used to have marketing on the back as Quattro Valve. That was the 4 valve per cylinder technology, and that's standard on this car. And one of the things I hear from the forums that I read is one of the reasons these cars are going up in value and quite collectible is that these cars were easier to service because you could get at everything from the engine compartment. A lot of Ferraris, you either have to take the engine out or access them from the bottom. This is simpler. You can do service on this car. And speaking of service, the car just had a major service done to it. It had its belt service as well. So all the tricky stuff to do has just been done. And it has 13,000 miles on it, which is unbelievable to say, and basically is ready to go. Now in the front is the frunk, and that's really spare tire storage. And then we're gonna get inside, tell you about the inside, go for a drive, and get at it. Okay, the inside. You know what I like about this? It's simple. It's very 80s, of course. You see the switches in the center console here, real reminiscent of the era. And you've got the beautiful gated shifter here in the center, and a simple steering wheel that has the horn, exactly what you expect from a Ferrari, and the instrument cluster. The most notable is the speedo that has, you know, the odometer there, just 13,000 miles, which is unbelievable. Then you've got oil, pressure, and you also get the temperature and the tachometer. That's it. That's all you get. Now, this car has an aftermarket Alpine radio in it and a passport speed detector, but radar detector, I should say. But from what I understand, often these cars wouldn't get sold with radios and then buyers would put in exactly what they want. This one has Bluetooth connectivity, so it's up to date if you want to leave that in there. So the seats covered in leather, the doors, the dash, full leather interior, and I like the Ferrari mats. So there's really not much you can say about it other than it's a target top. So let's start it up and go for a spin. Oh, one thing I should say, this comes with the regular standard exhaust. A lot of guys will buy these cars and then put on an aftermarket exhaust to get that really big Ferrari sound. So this is a bit muted, but of course someone who buys this car can change that. All right, handbrake is kind of tricky, and away we go. So the first thing you notice when you drive this car is first gear is down where second gear typically is, and what's at first gear is reverse. And I love the gated shifter. You kind of think, is it going to be hard to use? And no, it's not. So that's kind of cool. And you know what I hear a lot from people? Is that modern cars have no soul. This car's got a soul. It's simple, it's basic, it's man and machine, nothing else, nothing else. The steering is very lightly assisted. There's no tilt to the steering. You adjust your seating position, that's it. That's one nice feature. It's got automatic mirrors. You can do that automatically. But this is what it's all about. We're getting on the highway now. Get into the Ferrari lane. I love it! I've only ever driven one of these cars before, and it was only in a parking lot, and that was a 308. This is fantastic. Now, I could see how you could get hooked into the vintage Ferrari bug. Now, it's hard to tell by looking at the car because you don't have a reference point to judge it by, but I would say that this is about the same size as a current model Boxster, and not a bad comparison either. So it's a small car in comparison to a modern Ferrari. It also is not that powerful. And one thing I've learned through the many years of driving and testing cars is sporty cars where you have to learn how to get the most out of the engine and the transmission are actually more fun to drive than just really powerful cars. You have to use your skill as a driver. This car has 260 horsepower, and you know what, I had an old air-cooled 911, had about the same horsepower, and you know what, they're just kind of more fun to drive. And the steering feel really can't be replicated by a lot of modern cars. It's just so direct. This wheel is directly connected to those front wheels. You go over a little ripple in the road and you feel it. You feel it through your backside. It's very back to basics. Modern cars just can't do this. You have to go vintage. Vintage with low miles is even better. So this car is a perfect balance of aesthetic appeal. It just looks so 1980s Ferrari. It's got the badge with that prancing horse. That is certainly intoxicating. It's got the sound, and it just feels good. I mean, sometimes you get in old cars and they don't feel particularly good. It's more about the nostalgia. This car feels great. Imagine on a Sunday morning, getting up early, going for a drive, nobody else on the road, and you have a Ferrari 328 GTS? How frickin' good would that be? Doesn't get better than that. So as I mentioned, a friend of mine has this car for sale. It's been a great honor for me to get it and actually spend some time with it. I absolutely get why these would be going up in value. They don't make cars like this anymore. You've heard that saying before, but it's so true. They just don't make cars that are this simple, down to basics. It's basically the man and the machine, and you're doing all the work. It's a real time capsule going back and driving something from 1988 with such few miles on it, just 13,000 miles. So there you go, 1988 Ferrari 328 GTS. It sounds good just to say it.